Hello and welcome to Inside Iraq. I'm Jassim Azzawi. Those who have escaped the bombs of the Iraq war may still not survive the long-term effect of the war. Indeed, some weapons used during the US-led invasion of 2003 may still kill long after war is over. This may be the case of depleted uranium, which is sometimes added to munitions because its high density allows them to penetrate armor more easily. But it is also a highly toxic substance. Many Iraqi doctors say its radiation causes an alarming rise in cancer rates and birth defects among Iraqi children. All over Iraq, 300 sites are said to be contaminated by depleted uranium. Cancer rates are especially high in the province of Babel. Here's a report from that region in southern Iraq.
Doctors in Iraq are recording an alarming rise in the number of cancer victims south of Baghdad. Sufferers in the province of Babel have risen by almost tenfold in just 3 years. Locals blame depleted uranium from US military equipment used in the 2003 invasion. These cancer cases have spread fears among the locals, prompting them to demand an investigation. This young mother was diagnosed with lung cancer 4 months ago. In Babel province in southern Iraq, she is but one example out of 9,000 new cases of cancer.
This is our life, and this is our environment. All have been polluted by the war. I am 23 and I have cancer, though I am the only one to be infected in my family history. I wish I could become better for the sake of my children. If I die, who is going to take care of my children?
According to the head of the local cancer centre, Dr. Sharif Al-Alwachi, cancer rates have been rising at an alarming rate over the past 6 years. Like many Iraqi doctors, he thinks it has to do with the use of depleted uranium during and following the US-led war in 2003.
The environment could be contaminated by chemical weapons and depleted uranium from the aftermath of the war on Iraq. The air, soil and the deserts are all polluted by these weapons, and as they come into contact with human beings, they become poisonous. This is new to our region. People are suffering here. The government, the WHO and the UN seem silent about it. They should come and look into this as a matter of urgency and provide solutions.
The US and UK militaries have never officially acknowledged the effects of depleted uranium. But Iraqi researcher Abdul Haq Al-Ani says the risk is obvious. He has been researching the effects of depleted uranium on Iraqi civilians since 1991.
I myself personally measured the radiation in one burnt out troop carrier in the center of Qibla, which is one district in Basra. And the children were playing around there. And the Geiger counter was screaming because the indicator went beyond the range.
Comprehensive research on the link between radiation and cancer rates in Iraq is still missing. But Iraqi doctors say what they see in the hospitals suggests that even though the war may be over, civilians are still dying of its consequences.
To discuss the controversy surrounding the use of depleted uranium and whether it is the real cause for the rising cancer rates in Iraq to such an alarming level, I'm joined from Basra by Dr. Jawad Al-Ali, a cancer specialist and a member of the Iraqi Cancer Board, and from London by radiation expert Christopher Busby. We also invited the Pentagon to take part in this discussion, but they declined our invitation. Gentlemen, welcome to Inside Iraq. Dr. Jawad Al-Ali, you are a physician, you are a member of the Iraqi Cancer Board, and you have seen the astronomical rise in cancer rates as well as defects among children. Explain to me what is going on in Basra.
Really, as you know, Iraq is affected by 3 wars, 3 destructive wars. The last 2 is the 1991 war and the 2003 war, where depleted uranium is used for the first time in history. The 1991 war, they used depleted uranium at the western part of Basra, and also they dropped some of the uranium weapons on the death road during the withdrawal of the Iraqi army. And also they dropped some of the depleted uranium at the eastern part of Basra, where it was the only way to withdraw our army from Kuwait.
Did that cause such an astronomical rise in the cancer rates in 1991 and in the 90s, and also in the 2003?
After 3-4 years, that is in 1994, I noticed that the hospital receiving many patients with cancer, and we were surprised at that time, and we don't know what was the link. But after 2 years, that is in 1996, one of the intelligent persons who work with the intelligence, and he is escorting one of the delegations, he told me that depleted uranium is used. And he told me that this is a secret, please keep it inside your brain.
It is no longer a secret, Dr. Jawad Al-Ali. Let me bring in Christopher Busby.
Yeah.
Mr. Busby, you were a witness expert in one of the British trials regarding a soldier who developed cancer immediately after returning from deployment in the southern part of Iraq.
In September of this year, I was asked by the coroner in the West Midlands near Birmingham to attend an inquest as an expert witness. I've become an expert on the health effects of depleted uranium. I sat on a number of government committees, including a Ministry of Defence committee, and I've studied the health effects of uranium now for almost 15 years. And I've closely followed these arguments about the increase in cancer in Iraq and in other areas where uranium has been used. So I was asked to give evidence as an expert witness in this case. This man, Stuart Dyson, had worked as an Ordnance Corps support soldier. So basically what he did was he cleaned up the vehicles. And as a result, he became contaminated with depleted uranium, which collected on the vehicles which were used in the 2003 Gulf War. And he then developed cancer at a very early age, about 38. I mean, it's very, very rare to get that cancer, colon cancer, at that age. The normal rate is about 6 in a million people. So now we know, as a result of cancer research, that cancer is caused by exposure to something that causes a mutation in cells. And so we have to look for something that he was exposed to that caused mutations in cells. And really there isn't anything else but depleted uranium.
Dr. Jawad Al-Ali, you were also a member of a research team in Iraq, especially in the south, and you have seen the deformities and the defects among newly born babies in Iraq. How bad is that?
You know, depleted uranium, it's not only a cancer-inducing factor, but also it might affect the chromosomes, whether in the husband or in the mother of a child. And many children are born with deformities, with loss of limbs, with a big head, with deformed legs. And the rate of these deformities is increasing about 7 times since 1991 until 2002. And also another phenomena we noticed here in Basra, that families clustering of cancer in families, a husband and a wife are affected, and many families, I got their pictures with me. The other phenomena is the appearance of double and triple cancers, that is 3 cancers in one patient or 2 cancers in the same patient. These phenomena are very strange for us. I haven't seen it before because I worked in Basra for about 39 years. And I haven't seen such cases of cancer. The other thing is the change of pattern of cancer, as it's said by Dr. Busby. We have a change in the pattern, that is the cancers of elderly people appearing now in a younger age group. And this is surprising. Even the breast cancer, which is a disease of middle and elderly ladies now appearing at the age of 20.
Let me, Mr. Busby, in the 1991 war, most of the fighting was done outside the centers of population, outside the big cities. But in 2003, a great majority of the war, of the battles actually happened in center of populations. In 1991, we started to see the effect of the depleted uranium almost 2 years or 3 years after that immediately. Are we going to witness a dramatic rise later on, even in places like Baghdad?
I believe you are. The way in which this works is that you get an immediate genetic shock, and then you get a build-up of an effect over a longer period of time. But the other thing is that if you already have caused genetic damage in the first Gulf War, then those people will be more likely to get cancer as a result of a second hit in the second Gulf War. So what you've got here is, I'm afraid, that in my prediction, there's going to be a massive increase in cancer and a massive increase in birth defects, because this material is one of the most dangerous genetic damage material that exists on Earth, because it binds to the DNA and it focuses radiation into that part of the body where it's most dangerous, where it causes the most damage for heritable defects, as Dr. Ali says, for cancer also, as he says. So I'm afraid that the whole genetic makeup of the Iraqi population, and probably a lot of the Gulf War veterans who fought there too, from America and from the United Kingdom also, will be suffering as a result of these exposures.
Dr. Jawad, this depleted uranium, which is put in a round, in a shell, in order to penetrate a thick armor, when it's released, also releases a great amount of toxic material that seeps into the ground and perhaps into the aquifers, into the subterranean water. To what extent the Iraqi health system right now capable of dealing with this cancer rate? I know that the country is going through a tremendous agony because of security, and yet on top of that, you have the cancer and the deformities. Are you capable, are you geared to deal with such cases?
Usually these patients with cancer are treated in an oncology center in Basra with 40 beds for adults and 25 beds for children. And this is not enough to accommodate all the patients who are coming to the oncology center every day, who are usually 60 to 70 patients each day. And the other problem is that we are lacking the medicines, essential medicines to treat these patients. Equipment also is not enough for diagnosis and to treat patients. We haven't got the radiological treatment, that is radiation equipment. It's not available in Basra now.
It is in the vested interest of the Allied forces, especially the US and UK, to say depleted uranium is not the real cause for the rise in cancer. And yet, you as an expert, as well as others from the UN, they think at least there is a substantial amount of evidence that the depleted uranium is actually the culprit. Where do people go for justice? I mean, Dr. Jawad Al-Ali is talking about hundreds and thousands of people are suffering from cancer. Where do they go?
I have no answer to that. This is a situation which has occurred in the past throughout history. It is essentially a question of the truth, of speaking truth to power. So you speak the truth and power responds, but in this case power responds by denying the truth that you are speaking. The British government has persistently denied, and most recently has actually refused to concede or refused to accept the verdict of a British court. So we have a British court in September who found that this man was poisoned by depleted uranium, which caused his cancer, and the British government wrote a long letter saying that we refuse to accept this judgment. So you have a rather peculiar situation in British law at the moment, in politics, and I really don't know what the answer to this is.
Was there a judgment by the court allocating a certain amount of money to the family of the deceased soldier? No. And no, there wasn't, because this wasn't that kind of court. It was just an inquest court which is just set up to find out the cause of death. But of course, what can happen is that the wife
the widow of Mr. Dyson can then go to court and sue the British government. And I can tell you that if she did do that, she would very likely win the case. And in fact, I myself have won quite a few tribunals on this issue of depleted uranium. But the government is prepared to allow these tribunals to be lost because they don't, and then they will even pay compensation, but they don't want to concede overall that they are wrong over this business of depleted uranium, because if they were to do so, it would affect all sorts of policies that they have relating to winning wars and the use of the weapon. And secondly, of course, it feeds through into nuclear power, because if these small amounts of depleted uranium can cause cancer and the horrifying effects that we see in the areas where they've been used, like Iraq, then they can also cause similar effects where uranium is used, like nuclear power stations and uranium mines and all of the things that make money for the rich and the powerful.
Dr. Jawad, at least in the West, especially in the United States, Canada, even Britain, there is a likelihood, there is more than 50% chance that somebody can overcome this cancer. How about in Iraq?
The cancer, I think it means death in Iraq. Because, you know, the non-available drugs and the poor services and you know, the state of the hospitals is very bad, and the equipments are not available, and it is really, it's something to make everybody sad. If you see these patients looking for drugs outside the hospital and the markets to buy drugs with a lot of money they need to buy drugs.
So you're not getting any help from the international community, from Western Europe, from the United States, from UK? You're not getting any help?
We haven't got NGOs here, but probably an NGOs from outside Iraq. They give some helps to these patients, which is not too much really. But there are no NGOs in Iraq to give support for these patients. And I am very sorry to say this.
Mr. Busby, given the sad effect on the population, the use of depleted uranium, and Iraq perhaps is not the only country where it was used. As a matter of fact, it was used in the Bosnia War in the Balkan by the Allied forces when they bombed Serbia for almost 70 days. Has the lesson been taken by Western powers that this depleted uranium, it might be good to knock off a couple of tanks, but eventually it's going to kill many, many civilians?
Yes, well, this is a very good question, and I'm afraid I can't give you the answer to it. But I can tell you one thing, that certainly the peacekeepers who were deployed in the Balkans were from a number of European countries. One of them was Italy. And from Spain and Portugal as well. And studies that have been done, proper epidemiological studies that have been done of the Italian peacekeepers who were deployed in the Balkans, have showed an enormous increase in cancer. And the increase in cancer was so great that they suppressed the initial evidence of it, and they've gone back to do another study just to make sure that what they found was true. So that certainly in some countries they have realized that exposure to this material is astonishingly dangerous, that it produces high levels of cancer. So it's hard to know whether this lesson will be learned by the military, I mean, who seem to just want to use this stuff willy-nilly in order to win wars, without any consideration of what might happen to even their own troops or to populations who were exposed. And at some time I think this is going to end up in some international court of law. I think it's almost inevitable, because these kinds of cancer increases just cannot be suppressed for all time. There are too many people involved.
Dr. Jawad Al-Ali, there are more than 300 sites in Iraq contaminated with depleted uranium. Is Iraq capable? Does it have the equipment? Does it have the manpower and the energy and the money to clean these sites?
The cleaning up of the contaminated areas is not easy in Iraq. Now in Basra we have the scrap of tanks which are destroyed during the war is still in between the houses, and it's a big source of contamination for children who are playing in these scraps of tanks. And according to the Ministry of Environment, they said there are more than 300 areas which are contaminated with uranium. And until now, no single area is cleaned up.
Mr.
So
Busby,
it's not easy, really.
Immediately after the 1990 war, the Gulf syndrome emerged as one of the consequences of that war. It has something to do with breathing, with emphysema, and other ailments. Are we going to see another Gulf syndrome after the 2003 war?
I think we have seen that, and certainly measurements that were made, which I obtained data from the Ministry of Defence, showed that the British troops anyway had high levels of significantly higher levels than they should have of uranium inside their urine. So they will have been exposed to uranium. But I'd like to make one point about all of this this business of cleaning up the area where this has been used. The most important point is that the exposures occur at the time that the weapons are used and shortly afterwards, because it's the very fine dust that's produced, the microscopic particles. That's what causes the exposure. And after a year or two, those particles get washed into the soil. So although there is some exposure then, most of the exposure occurs at the beginning. But the point is this, is you cannot clean up the genetic damage to the population. Once that genetic damage occurs, and it occurs at the beginning when these weapons are used, then that damage is in the DNA of the population, and at some time it will come out, either as a deformed baby or else it will come out as cancer in some individual. And that will remain, that damage will remain in the population forever until somebody dies, until the person that has that damage dies before they have a baby. So this is the most extraordinary thing. You have not contaminated a country, you've contaminated the genetic makeup of the people in the country. And as far as your soldiers are concerned, the Gulf War syndrome soldiers, you've contaminated their DNA and the children's DNA and their children's DNA and so on. So this is a much larger problem than just the problem of cleaning up a piece of countryside.
Christopher Busby, Jawad Al-Ali, gentlemen, thank you for being guests on Inside Iraq. To watch the show online and to find more information about our show, please go to aljazeera.net/English. We have reached the end of this show. Join me next week when we take another look inside Iraq. Until then, have a great week.